Expectations for Doom Eternal were pretty high, and I'm gonna say that on its own it's a pretty good game, but how does it compare to Doom 2016? Well, it has ups and downs. The two games are distinct enough to warrant exploring their differences. So, in addition to this video being an Eternal review, it will also be a comparison. There's a lot of changes made to gameplay, lore and the meta elements, and not all of them are for the best. Eternal is also way more challenging, which is gonna make the Ultra Nightmare run way more interesting and life shortening. Let's begin. Doom Eternal is a sequel to 2016's Doom. It takes place on Earth where a demonic invasion is underway. You, the Doomslayer, are set to stop this invasion while also discovering more about the powers at play. And that's my summary of the plot. I've got much more to say about it, but we'll cover it later in spoiler territory. First of all, let me address the elephant in the room. My PC has no business running this game. It managed, but let's say I'm not in the position to compare graphics. However, since we're talking about the presentation, the music is still great. There's no track that stands out as the BFG division of Eternal for me, but it's more or less of the same quality. Overall, there's nothing to complain about except maybe the power-up effect. What I don't consider a problem but could see some people having trouble with is that the game is more arcadey looking. You know, like this? This is not only a UI thing, it also applies to some enemies and even the level design at times. For example, there's an abundance of humorous floor breaking and little stuff like armories in power plants. I mean, maybe American ones have armories, I don't know. It isn't terrible of course, but it's less very similar and some people might not like it. The collectibles are also Funko Pops now, and they stop you when you pick them up. Great. One thing I'm not set to let go is the one health pickups. I never was a fan of those. There's also a lot of changes from Doom 2016 that were made for nostalgia reasons. The Megasphere, the Plasma Gun, the Mancubus, they're needless changes but harmless ones. The biggest changes are to gameplay and I want to dig into them. First of all, you've got way less ammo. We're talking Somalia levels of starvation. Rich get richer isn't a rune anymore, so there's no way of cheating the system. The way arenas work now is that you're supposed to actually get resources from enemies during it. There's at least 2 fodder demon that will keep respawning indefinitely and you can use them to replenish your stuff. Flame Belch, Doomguy Saint's Toss looks like should do some damage, but it's there just to make the enemies drop armor. The Super Shotgun also does that when upgraded. The Equipment Launcher has a freezing grenade that later can make enemies drop health. However, your best option for that is Glory Killing. But there's a problem, your normal fists now deal next to no damage. In Doom 2016 it was very useful to combo a melee attack or two and you could initiate glory kills by just bashing enemies. Here you need to be very careful not to overkill them with regular weaponry. Since the pistol has been removed, you have no dedicated glory kill setup weapon, so you'll have to become very good at timing melee attacks. And that's because glory kills also charge up an attack called Blood Punch. When it's not ready, your fists do nothing. When it is, your punch deals some good area damage, and you really don't want to waste your blood punch on a single zombie you meant to glory kill. At least it isn't triggered by collectibles. The good news is that enemies still drop health when you're about to die. Lastly, you can use the chainsaw to get ammo, but this causes a problem. If you want to chainsaw heavy demons, you need 3 fuel bar, but saving the fuel for big enemies is unwise. If you're at 2 full bars and then keep exploring the level hoping to find another gas canister, then you might be out of ammo when there isn't a fodder enemy in sight. Yeah, a couple of times I've actually run out of everything, so don't bother with chainsawing bigger demons, only use it to get ammo. This is in stark contrast with Doom 2016, where the chainsaw was a weapon and not an indispensable tool for virtually all encounters. Your last fuel bar replenishes on its own now, so this way you always have the option to transform small demons into ammo, but I wonder why you can't upgrade it so you replenish all 3 bars. Thankfully, equipment is still endless and you can use it to great FPS destroying effect. This whole system leads to arenas where you'll be constantly avoiding damage, prioritizing enemies, gathering resources resources and glory killing demons. It takes a while to come into its own, but it's a pretty good gameplay loop. Furthermore, the addition of 2 dashes and the monkey bars makes kiting enemies easier than ever. While we're on it, enemies are quite different in Eternal. Instead of a simple shoot it until it dies, plenty of them have weak points you can exploit to reduce their offensive potential. Some even have weaknesses to specific weapons, like for example the Cacodemon. Sadly, imps have been downgraded, they just don't kite you around anymore and I wonder why, they were wonderfully deadly in 2016. I guess it was really important for the fodder to be weak and easily killed. For this reason, soldiers, imps and zombies pose no real threat to you, so much so that the game wastes no time introducing heavy demons. For example, the Arachno... Oh yeah, let me touch on this for a second. The unholding this game does is insulting. First of all, the game doesn't trust you to shoot the red glowing weak points by yourself, it has to stop everything to tell you how to fight demons. It's especially jarring in boss fights. In this one, for example, you fight a guy that will then become a regular enemy, the Doom Hunter. During the level, you kind of assemble him as you progress, and the game constantly wrestles the camera from the player to show you these things. It's so annoying. During the whole game, even when you're literally in front of something that you caused to happen, the game has to show it to you from a distance. Anyway, there's a build up to this fight as you find codex pages on it and the guy you're there to kill comments on its prowess. Then it's introduced. Oh my, a boss fight, I wonder how to kill him. It has a shield, so maybe I should use something in the environment to lower it, or... Doom Hunter is a super heavy demon that specializes in long range lock-on rockets. Its shield and sled are weak points. Destroy the shield with the plasma rifle to briefly disable it. Destroy the sled to permanently disable it. Why? Why do you do this to me? This is an absolute failure of game design. Compare the possessed engineer introductions, for example. In Doom 2016 you open a door, screaming guy comes at you, you shoot it, it flies back and explodes. Immediate, effective, and it didn't stop the action to do this. At the end of the day, it doesn't really make the game worse, but it's such a needless and easily fixable thing. Video games should teach the player through design, and not through big pop-ups. Anyway, what was I talking about? Alright, the demons. They're always in fighting, every single arena has them fighting each other, but without actually dealing damage? Why? I think to speak for everyone when I say that infighting was fun because it's a player-controlled way to turn enemies against each other and not because it's cool looking, but I digress. There's a few new additions. Gargoyles are flying imps and are a bit more dangerous. Then there's the Whiplash that kind of has the summoner's ranged attack. The Carcass makes walls in front of you hoping you'll kill yourself, but they can be detonated by energy weapons. The Prowler is a teleporting tankier imp. The Dread Knight is like a Hell Knight but with a ranged attack, and finally the Revenant has been brought back from uselessness, now sporting proper homing missiles. Super heavy demons require a special amount of attention to deal with. There's the Archvile, which is way less scary than the original but can summon several demons at once, the Doom Hunter, who has homing missiles, a shield and 2 life bars, the Tyrant, a mini cyber demon, the Baron of Hell that... why did they change it? I mean the model, it was so perfect and noticeable, the big red guy. Here I constantly mistake them for Dread Knights. And lastly, the Marauder, this fucking guy.
Let me help you to slay my boss.
You know what Doom needed? An enemy you can only counter-attack. They're absolute tumors in arenas, but I admit that they're high-octane fights. Just remember to soften them up with remote detonations.
My boss has been opened.
Speaking of weapons, I never knew how useful the pistol was until I lost it. There's only 2 new weapons. The ballista replaces the railgun and it's kind of a worse version. Then there's the Unmaker. You get it by completing optional encounters, more on them later, and it shares its ammo pool with the BFG while being single target focused. I didn't find many uses for it. Every weapon had its mods changed, but there's still a couple of clear winners for me. For example, the combat shotgun has a grenade launcher that can kill hordes of chaff very easily, can destroy weak points and can instantly stagger Cacodemons. The other mod is a full auto one that's a terrible waste until you get ammo upgrades. The scope on the heavy rifle is now a semi-automatic low rate of fire weapon meant for weak spots and heads, while the micro missiles are more useful than ever because they get a damage boost after a normal kill. The plasma gun dropped the stun bomb in favor of this fucking thing that takes half your ammo and half an hour to... kill an enemy? What is this garbage? Fortunately, Hit Blast is actually very good now. The rocket launcher is pretty much the same, except it's now spooky looking. The new super shotgun is amazing. I wasn't a fan of this weapon in 2016, it was a waste of shells and forced you to get way too close, but this time you want to get places quickly, and what better way to travel than a grappling hook. This weapon went from the worst to my favorite, I can't express how fun it is. The railgun has suffered the opposite fate. Gone is siege mode and gone is the worthless precision bolt. Now you got a slowly charging explosive dart that's not that great, or an even slower charging horizontal blade that's not that great. The chain gun doesn't need to spin up anymore, thank god, so it exchanged the rotator for a shield that's actually good. The BFG doesn't automatically jib everything anymore and now has an ammo pool. Lastly, you get the Crucible, which is a melee weapon that can kill almost any demon in one hit. It has limited charges and you find them around like you would BFG ammo. It's very useful. There's also the option to change skins for weapons, enemies and the Slayer himself. Overall, it's a satisfying and deadly arsenal. In Doom 2016, after you got Rich Get Richer, only Siege mode really got used. Here it forces you to use all your ammo types simply because you really don't have enough to just spam one weapon. It's a good change overall. However, the changes to the progression system aren't amazing. First of all, you can unlock runes in any order, so of course you're just gonna stick with your favorite 3. You can't even upgrade them. Then there's armor tokens, which are fine, but after you rush to a few good ones, you'll be left with upgrades of neglectable effect. You can get sentinel crystals to upgrade your max health, armor or ammo pool like Argent Cells did before, and by taking pairs of them you can also get some miscellaneous upgrades. There's nothing wrong with this, but it feels way less impactful than in Doom 2016 just because a lot of these aren't useful. Also, the item finder is the only exploration buff you'll ever need. Speaking of, exploration is way more complex than in Doom 2016, with the dashes, the climbing and the swinging up monkey bars. At times the layout of the maps is confusing and some secrets were really well hidden, but the good thing is that this time you don't need everything. Unlike in Doom 2016, exploration doesn't give you weapon upgrade points, so if you want to skip secrets or stuff you don't need, you can do it. However, it is a good idea to get all the useful secrets. There's batteries to use in the Fortress of Doom, your in-between missions hub, to unlock tokens and Slayer skins. Then there's mastery tokens, which you can use to bypass the most annoying weapon challenges. Although no challenge is really too hard to complete, because in the Fortress of Doom you have an arena to practice where, in addition to being immortal, you can farm masteries. Weapon upgrades are 10 each mission and they're given by clearing the level of enemies. Most levels have optional encounters in the form of gore nests that are timed and at times challenging. Their only problem is that you often get to them with low ammo, so you might need to postpone the cleansing. There's also Slayer gates that require a key that's hidden nearby and teleport you in a different arena. They're harder than regular ones but aren't timed. There's 5 of them and each one gives you a fifth of the Unmaker. The good news is that this time, if you miss a secret, you won't have to replay the whole mission, as towards the end you unlock fast travel. This allows you to backtrack to any part of the level and it's useful to get stuff you've missed. Backtracking through toxic sludge would have been very annoying. Also, rad suits are back. One of the things you might find while exploring are extra lives. Basically, they revive you with full health once you die. These are replaced by armor in Ultra Nightmare, and there's a new game mode that resets your progress if you run out of lives. I don't really like them, or rather I wish you could choose whether or not to use one. Take a boss fight for example. You go in and obviously you're going to lose your first try, because otherwise it would be a shitty fight. But by the time you have learned the boss's moveset, you're out of lives. On the other side of the coin, during later runs, since you're not surprised by enemies anymore, they make the game way too easy, so treasure the challenge in your first run because it isn't coming back. Despite this, I'm still of the opinion that Eternal has more difficult encounters and more dangerous enemies than 2016. I would have made each extra life give you a couple more seconds of invulnerability while giving the player fewer of them. You can also unlock cheat codes that you activate when replaying levels just for fun. They go from permanent power-ups to memes like no friends mode. Oh, and if you die too many times on a boss, the game gives you the option to wear cack armor that, being made out of soy and estrogen, makes you tankier for the whole boss fight. Uncalled for salt in the wounds game, is not my fault I never skipped a rope as a kid. Yeah, unlike in Doom 2016, there's a couple of hard boss fights, and by couple I mean this one. The others aren't so tough. On the subject of challenging, there's also master levels. If you haven't pre-ordered the game, there's only one, but apparently the devs will add more. There are their version of regular levels with different enemies, but also with all weapons in mind. The one I played seemed very fun. Yeah, I didn't pre-order this game, just out of principle. It has nothing to do with PayPal refusing to collaborate and the Steam support quality being lower than my graphic settings. Speaking of low quality, remember Doom 2016's multiplayer? It was universally panned as garbage on day one, but the player base has been decent and even today it's playable. Basically it's an arena shooter but with a 2-weapon limit and perks. The outstanding feature was the option of turning into an overpowered demon and just stomp the enemy team. Aside from the unoriginality, there was also some technical problems, notably the audio levels, as it was hard to even hear weapons. You know, there's nothing I hate more than when a game does something cool and original and then goes, "Here's your deathmatch, bro." Enter Battle Mode. It's a multiplayer mode that puts the Slayer against 2 main enemy demons. It is also the only available multiplayer game mode. There's fodder demons spawning in the arena and the player demons can summon harder ones to help. The Slayer needs to be proficient with his arsenal and the demons need cooperation.
Ciao. Ciao. Ciao.
The demon team also has access to other abilities, like healing and damage zones or blocking the Slayer's loot. For now, the Sentinel team, as it's called, only has the Slayer, but there's 5 demons to choose from: Mancubi, Archviles, Revenant, Pain Elementals and Marauders, each with different abilities, strength, weaknesses and mobility options. Some seem better than others.
Adesso faccio la mega penal zone. Faccio il boost della speed e l'altro assieme. Stacca! Stacca! Ah!
This game mode makes for a fast-paced but interesting round where the players battle it out and whoever starts losing has to regroup. If a demon dies, it has 20 seconds to respawn. If both are dead at the same time, then the Slayer wins. So a low health demon has to heal, a lone one has to stay alive until the other respawns, and a low health Slayer has to use his mobility to get some distance and then glory kill, flame belch and chainsaw the fodder demons for resources. It's a gameplay loop that's similar to how the single player arenas play out. After each round, all players pick an upgrade. They might help with resource gathering, mobility, damage and so on. The longer the game goes, the better the upgrades are. The first team to win 3 rounds wins the game. You can then choose to leave the lobby or keep playing with the same people but shuffling the roles, provided the demons aren't in a party. I like it a lot. The game also has a bigger emphasis on longevity. There's weekly challenges, seasonal rewards and milestones to complete in order to get more cosmetics.
I am 43 years old and I choose to spend my money on toys. And then there is the Master Collection, and that's like opening up Castle Grayskull at Christmas, like Hipster Archvile.
Man, I can't wait. Furthermore, the devs promised an invasion mode, but it isn't here yet. It's all good stuff, but there doesn't seem to be enough people playing. Not only is not always guaranteed to get a match on the side you want, which is a problem because milestones require you to play 250 demon matches and 50 Slayer ones, and also you might get extremely laggy people. Now, will this fix itself as more people buy the game, or is it more of a matchmaking / netcode problem? Well, most of the games I've played were at least a bit janky, and those are the good ones. Battle mode isn't for people without patience. Expect plenty of unplayable matches and sporadic crashes. It definitely needs work. For example, I had this match where my teammates spawned below the map all rounds and we couldn't lose. Also, if your friend has the game on the Bethesda game launcher and you have it on Steam, there's no way of adding each other without randomly meeting in a match. I'm sure this will be changed, but it's pretty retarded. Still not as retarded as having a menu showing different keybinds for each demon and then have them be the same for everyone. Why? I want to like battle mode, but without region selection or at the very least ping filters, it's a coin toss between fun or unplayable matches. And there's no rank, so it's not hard to find people who are literally playing their first match. Right now, the state of Eternal's multiplayer infrastructure is kind of inexcusable, so if you want to buy the game because of battle mode, I'd suggest waiting. While we're on problems, I want to touch on the few bugs I found while playing. It's not hard to get out of bounds by dashing against corners. Sometimes walls or enemies takes a second to begin existing, which was actually a problem in 2016 as well. There's a couple of ledges that really don't want to cooperate with you, and last but not least, I want to show you all the funniest and most inconvenient bug ever. So, now it's finally time to talk about the story. This is where the spoilers begin, but a wise man once said that story in a video game is like story in a certain kind of movie. So let me assure you, it doesn't get in the way of gameplay. Doom 2016's plot went as followed. Earth has an energy problem because there's too many people on it. A brilliant scientist called Samuel Hayden, Sam Hyde for short, leads a USC mission on Mars in order to solve this problem. Ancient artifacts there reveal that Hell is a real place, and Sam Hyde develops a plan to study and harvest Hell's energy. But just as he lost his human form, so too the USC lost its humanity. They started experimenting with demons, and eventually Olivia Pierce, basically Hayden's second in command, strikes a deal with the demons, allowing them to invade Mars. However, one of the artifacts found in Hell was the Doomslayer, and the Doomslayer slays demons until there are no more demons on Mars. In the process, he fucks up the supply of Hell's energy and has to sacrifice Vega, a very advanced artificial intelligence. So Hayden decides to imprison him like the demons once did. So what does Eternal do with this story? Well, it retcons way too much. First of all, we find out the Slayer backstory because we need to explain every single detail about everything ever. He's like a guy that went on Mars, which means that Sam Hyde USC mission wasn't the first, and one of the previous Doom game is canon. Kinda. On Mars there's a civilization of people that aren't humans but still look humans called the Sentinels. They do that thing where they're both technologically advanced and have old Earth traditions like Colosseums, so they test Doomguy there. He proceeds to kick ass and thus get recruited among the Sentinel warriors. The ruling class of this civilization is called the Makers, which is totally a clever play on the word Maker. Good job, writers. The Makers are worshipped as gods but aren't. Turns out that they live in a dimension called Urdak, which is kind of the opposite of the demon's dimension. These two dimensions have nothing to do with the real world, it's not heaven and hell. Well, anyway, Doomguy blabbers about the demons to the Makers, who decide to check them out. Turns out that they can make energy out of souls, but it's a slow and inefficient process, so the Makers have Sentinel slaves build up a tower in hell in secret. This tower helps converting souls into argent energy that they siphon into Urdak in order to survive. The Makers then strike a deal with the demons. They give them passage to other worlds to consume in exchange for allowing argent energy to flow. So the Doomslayer and a couple of Sentinels decide to go wreck this tower, but were betrayed by the Betrayer, which is this guy, which is the single least important character in the Doom universe. He gives you a dagger and fucks off for the rest of the game. Why even bother modeling him? So now the Slayer's trapped in hell and the rest is history. Except, turns out Hayden was a Maker. How? Why? Why did he betray the other Makers? We don't know. And then the Makers have a father, aka the being? AI? The thing that made a new leader Maker every 10,000 years. But then he disappeared at some point and then it turns out it's Vega? Hayden took him? But it's just software, didn't I have a backup? I backed him up. The super advanced order civilization should have remembered to back him up too. I guess that explains Vega interfacing with the Predator armor. Also the leader Makers speaks of penance and salvation and stuff, but they're like dudes that live in Warframe Orokin towers. They're not divinity, they're a race of robot people. They wanted to portray a Darksider style apocalypse, but they're just extra dimensional invaders. Oh, and the USC is actually working with the demons?
The deceiver, Samuel Hayden, has fallen.
I think it's implied that the whole corporation was made by the Makers in order to infiltrate Earth, but it existed before the Makers found out about Earth because Doomguy exists and he probably went to Mars. And also if Sam Hyde was in charge, or at least a high-ranking member of the USC, why didn't he do something about the plan? And they ruined the spokesperson that went from making humorously and self-aware quips
The road to hell is paved by Argent Energy.
to just being evil?
No one is born a sinner. You have to work hard to achieve success.
And Doomguy speaks, but then he doesn't speak anymore, and it just says in the codex that he doesn't, but he could, but they don't explain why. And there's a king that does absolutely nothing. And also the betrayer had a son that he also betrayed, and he asked the demons for his son, and the demons gave the son back in the form of a gigantic super titan that was moved by malice alone, and they did that to mock him, but they didn't do it to conquer planets? Like, this is the most effective weapon they have, and apparently they can just make it, but they only made one and they gave it to the makers for some reason. And I also like to point out that the only reason why the makers need Argent Energy is because they grow old and degenerate over time, and since the father is gone they can't make new makers. But Hayden doesn't have that problem because he already has a new body, and he's also the one that stole the father. So this is all his fault, but he's helping humanity against the maker's interests. So he caused the problem by stealing the father, found an alternative solution in the form of a new body, kept that solution for himself, and instead took the opposite side in a war he caused. Who wrote this? Why? Before Eternal, the story was that humanity found something otherworldly and borderline paranormal, so their first idea was to exploit the shit out of it, and they paid the price, but they had no real choice because there's too many people living on Earth and there's not enough resources for everyone. But instead it turns out that Samuel Hayden was getting Argent Energy because he knew that Earth was going to be consumed? If he had known about the makers and the demons, he would have prepared way better. His character went from a brilliant and unscrupulous to post-human scientist that did what he did because there was no other choice, to like a gay angel that turned robot and helped the humans for no reason at all, and also stole the ray Father God to help around a research facility? This is so bad. The game went from having interesting themes and an unassuming plot to having a confusing and nonsensical lore because they wanted a shitty JRPG fight with an angel. The makers are responsible for Argent Energy, the Demon Invasion, the Sentinel and their technology, USC, Samuel Hayden's scientific discoveries, and Doomguy's power, and all of this importance results in one level, one enemy and one boss. Fucking awful. But still, as I said, it doesn't get in the way of gameplay, and gameplay is king. The best thing they added was the option to skip cutscenes, so when replaying this game I won't have to subject myself to this nonsense plot.
This is raw Argent Energy.
What do you say?
I don't know, something about being gay.
During the game there's also a lot of stuff that seems remnant of cut features.
If the Crucible blade is removed, the Titan will rise again.
For example, I'm willing to bet that the mechs were at some point intended to be pilotable, and this wolf was more than just scenery. Plot-wise, we completely skip over Doomguy being freed and how he acquired the Fortress of Doom. Of course, since the game doesn't feel unfinished, these aren't points against it, it's just something I've noticed. So that was Doom Eternal. This game is actually amazing. I've taken to spite and avoid the new releases because, let's face it, none of them are worth 60 euros. And also my eyes hurt. Eternal 2 might not be worth full price, it's up to you really. If you liked 2016's Doom, then gameplay wise this is a more challenging and more action packed game. The resource management is limiting at first, but once you learn it, it becomes very fun. You might or might not prefer the new more arcadey look, but if you really cared about the story or were really looking forward to the multiplayer, then you'll be extremely disappointed. But overall, I would still recommend it. And as you can see, even shitty PCs can run it, albeit damaging your eyes permanently. When it comes to single player FPS games, for me this is the best franchise right now. And differently from Garbage Stein, it stayed strong even with the sequel. Okay, that was Eternal. I'll do an Ultra Nightmare run eventually, and I also might cover Invasion mode if it ever comes out, so if you're interested in that, stay tuned. Thanks for watching. See ya!
Huge guts. Huh?